if we stop buying their products, if we stop allowing them access to our market without complying with SEC rules, which we are, we have a law that our SEC is not enforcing, all right? If the American public would show up and say this is wrong, what would happen to the Chinese economy, and what would they have to do then?
You bring up a great point. If you believe that this is a new kind of war, it's not Cold War, it's not a kinetic war, it's a different war, and they described it to us in the book called Unrestricted Warfare back in 1999, and they're executing against that. I wrote an article about it a year ago. If you look at that, the way forward is for the United States to become informed about that and to stand up to the challenge. That means that sometimes we'll have to sacrifice, Senator, because what we've been seduced by are the cheap prices that we gave into over the last 30 years coming out of China that were, in some cases, in many cases, unfair because they were subsidized by the state.
But if we stop buying their stuff, what will happen?
Well, if foreign capital from the U.S. stops going into China, they have a real problem.
If we stop buying their product, what will happen?
Well,
if the American public says enough's enough, what will happen to their economy?
It'll collapse.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, first off, congratulations to both of you. I think you're both going to do a great job. Congratulations on all the success you've had, and this is a big opportunity for both of you, so congratulations. Dr. Crowley, we hear about actors. We hear the CCP attacking fallen gang members of the United States, American citizens. We hear about Erdogan's thugs beating up anti-Erdogan protesters in the United States. So in this role as chief of protocol, what can you do, if anything, about that?
Well, thank you very much for the question and for your longstanding friendship as well, Senator. Appreciate it. The Office of Chief of Protocol does not oversee policy. It executes what the President's vision is in terms of diplomatic relationships, diplomatic partnerships. So that would not be in my portfolio. But if confirmed, I do look forward to following the direction of the President and the Secretary of State on all policy matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Perdue, Jimmy Lai is unjustly on trial and in jail because of the Communist Party in China. As an ambassador to China, what do you think you can do to put pressure on the regime to release this hero of democracy and human rights?
Well, I appreciated seeing the picture in your office that day. I lived in Hong Kong, as you know, and when that was happening, I made a trip to Hong Kong, and actually we met with some of these people there and here. And what we have to do is stand up for human rights in a way that is a little bit different. China has now become very aggressive. After Hong Kong, all bets are off relative to what they are trying to do. And now it's becoming visible on a much larger scale with the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the WTO, and so forth, about where they're trying to bring malign influence to change the order to a degree in their favor. So what I'm going to do, if confirmed, as ambassador, will echo the message from the administration and from the Congress about how important this is to us.
So, Senator, the Communist Party sends fentanyl into the United States, killed 78,000 people last year. They treat the Uyghurs horribly. They don't follow any trade rules. They never comply with the WTO. It's a despicable government. They clearly want to destroy our way of life. And for the people that they've killed, they clearly have destroyed their way of life and their families. So would you recommend that any American citizen buy any Chinese products or have any Chinese apps on their phone or do any business with anything that's related to Communist China?
Well, I think the realization that our support of China over the last 30 years or more, going back to Reagan, actually, in terms of early investment in developing their economy, giving them access into most favored nation status when they didn't comply, they didn't qualify. Also, the violations in the World Trade Organization we've turned a blind eye to. Those days are over, I believe, and I think we've got to stand up, not just for our own protection, but for the protection of these systems that have served us well since Bretton Woods in 1944 that established the current world order. Going back to Senator Daines' recent trip over there, the only topic that I could see, the major topic that they talked about, was fentanyl. It's trips like that that make a difference, not trying to do trade, but trying to influence changes in their behavior, Senator.
You think she's going to change?
Senator, the issue is what is beneficial to their strategy. What do they want? And if you read what they've been writing over the last 25 years, I don't think he's going to change. The question is, what is his objective and what is he going to be capable of doing? Look, they have a problem. They can't feed their own population. 30% of the people, 30% of the food that is consumed in China is imported. I just said 73% of the oil is imported. They have a real problem right now with unemployment of people under 25. It's over 16% from what I read. If you look at the economy, focusing on state-owned enterprise is a real problem. The realization of U.S. capital now that has been going to China for the last 40 years and not getting the return that we should have gotten, but gave up technology and a lot of other things that went along with it.
So if we stop
that realization is going to really change.
If we stop buying their products, if we stop allowing them access to our market without complying with SEC rules, which we have a law that our SEC is not enforcing, all right? If the American public would show up and say this is wrong, what would happen to the Chinese economy, and what would they have to do then?
You bring up a great point. If you believe that this is a new kind of war, it's not Cold War, it's not a kinetic war, it's a different war, and they described it to us in the book called Unrestricted Warfare back in 1999, and they're executing against that. I wrote an article about it a year ago. If you look at that, the way forward is for the United States to become informed about that and to stand up to the challenge. That means that sometimes we'll have to sacrifice, Senator, because what we've been seduced by are the cheap prices that we gave into over the last 30 years coming out of China that were, in some cases, in many cases, unfair because they were subsidized by the state.
But if we stop buying their stuff, what will happen?
Well, if foreign capital from the U.S. stops going into China, they have a real problem.
If we stop buying their product, what will happen?
Well,
if the American public says enough's enough, what will happen to their economy?
It'll collapse.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Daines.
Dr. Crowley, congratulations on your nomination. It's good to have you here today. David, as I'm sitting here, I'm struck by thinking 30 years ago, as I'm looking at you and Bonnie. For all I know, we could have been on the Star Ferry together, crossing the harbor there in Hong Kong when we had two little ones that were born in Hong Kong, going from Guangzhou into Hong Kong for sometimes some R&R. And little did we know that we'd be sitting here today, some 30 years later, talking about your nomination to be the United States ambassador to China. What a journey it's been, and I can't think of a better nominee, somebody who understands China, somebody who has been a successful businessman, a United States senator, a member of this Foreign Relations Committee, and who has a passion for representing America proudly in China, and importantly, has the great respect that you do of President Trump and your respect of the president, that mutual strong relationship that you have that's been based on years of working together. There's just not a better guy to be going to Beijing for the United States than David Perdue. We've discussed the trafficking of fentanyl. Senator Scott brought that up briefly. Now the precursors that China is sending into Mexico, Canada, and the United States are a threat to our national security. Our leading cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds in the United States is fentanyl poisoning. It's a public health emergency. We have a drug war going on right now in the United States with fentanyl. China, sadly, remains the single largest provider of these deadly chemicals, we call them precursors, that the cartels then manufacture and bring across the southern border into our communities. President Trump has made this a priority to stop this poisonous tide. The Senate is eager to help. David, how can you, if confirmed, as United States ambassador to China, work with both the American and the Chinese governments to stem the flow of deadly fentanyl into my state of Montana, into your home state of Georgia, and other communities across America?
Well, Senator, I wish I had known you 30 years ago when we were both over there. I want to applaud what you've just done and what you've continued to do since you've been in not only the Senate but in the House as well, and that is interface with your friends and colleagues and people in China, standing up to them and telling them what's important to us. Your representation of U.S. interests has been the most powerful thing I've seen outside of presidential actions in my tenure in the last 10 years. I want to thank you for that. I know you just made a recent trip on this very topic. Look, this fentanyl poisoning kills more Americans in 1 year than died in Vietnam over 20 years. So this is President Trump has made a top priority of stopping this flow of this deadly drug into the United States. It's a multifaceted thing. It starts with the precursors in China. It goes to Canada and Mexico, where this is now being transferred into the United States. As ambassador, I will echo your priority as well as the president's priority that this is one of our top priorities. The Chinese, as you know, respect strength. They don't like a lot of complaining unless they see action. And right now, President Trump put 2 tariffs on this one issue. That's action. And I believe we'll see some response to that in the near future, hopefully.